continue on just for a moment in this area of influencing people. They have faith in people. Number 4, an influencer listens to people. In fact, Paul Tillich said the first duty of love is to listen. I don't know. Maybe you're not like I am, but one of the early marriage issues that Margaret and I had to work through is that Margaret would like to talk to me about issues of which I wanted to tell her how to solve them. And very early in the marriage, I realized that she didn't want answers. She didn't want Mr. Answer Man for her husband. What she wanted was just somebody to listen to her. Many times she said, John, I'm not wanting answers. Just listen to me, listen. And I want, she'd be halfway and I'd say, I got that one figured out. Here, step 1 and step 2, and then if you do this is huge. And I'd give her a list and say, there you are, go get him. Climb that mountain, Margaret. You can do that. She's not wanting to climb a mountain. She just wants somebody to listen to her. Just listen to it. It took me a long time to learn that. I love the story about the 89-year-old lady who had hearing problems, and the doctor said, I've got great news for you. He said, I can correct your problem. He said, there won't be any operation. He said, and the whole issue, and the lady said, listen, she said, I don't want you to operate. I don't want anything. She said, I've listened to people for 89 years, and it's enough. Just leave me deaf. You know what I'm saying? Wow. Okay, now. Let me help you to climb the ladder to better listening. This is something you can get your hands around. The first letter L, here we go, stands for look. Look at the person that's doing the speaking, because meanings are not in words, they're in people. So give them visual eye contact. The letter A stands for ask questions, because this is one of the quickest ways to become a good listener is by asking them questions. The first letter D, don't interrupt. Oh, that's so hard, isn't it? Huh? Isn't it just hard? You just want to jump in there. You just want to jump in, okay? The second letter D, don't change the subject. In fact, listening is wanting to hear. The letter E, check your emotions. And the letter R stands for responsive listening. In other words, nod with them. Let them know that you're listening. Let them know that you're hanging in there with them. Because this is a weakness in my life. Let me just do a little poll. It's a weakness in my life, so I'm already admitted. How many of you say, that I'm a little weak in the area of listening? Huh? Yeah. I think it's one of the major, and what is amazing is many people really look at leaders and they think leaders are, what they think leaders are always telling, not listening. But that's not true. Leaders are always listening to the heart of their people. Leaders are readers of people. They read and respond. They listen and then they lead. Number 5, an influencer understands people. In the book, Climbing the Executive Ladder, let me read a paragraph. Few things will pay you bigger dividends than the time and the trouble that you take to understand people. Almost nothing will add more to your stature as an executive and as a person. Nothing will give you greater satisfaction or bring you more happiness. Listening and understanding people is very difficult. As I shared with you, I just came back this week from Cancun, where I spent 2 days with these top Latino leaders. And because of the cultural barrier, because of the language barrier, I realized that my number one mission, before I ever could develop a strategy for them, which is what I knew they wanted to help them raise up leaders in Central and South America, before I could ever do that, I knew that my number one responsibility was to listen and understand. I literally, in 2 days, when I walked into that hotel, I never walked out of that hotel compound until I went back to the airport. I never got to see the beach or anything at Cancun. I literally stayed in that hotel. But here's what I want you to understand. I worked so hard at just trying to listen and understand. And I would come back at 11:30 at night to the room, and my wife Margaret would be there, and I would be mentally and physically exhausted. Because you know what it's like all day long just to try to understand and try to listen and try to sense where they are and feel what they feel and get inside their head and think like they think. In other words, this is not easy work at all. When I used to counsel 30 hours a week, I used to get worn out, just totally worn out counseling. And I'd ask myself why. I'd say, I've been sitting here all day listening to people with their issues. Why am I so tired? I haven't gone out and done anything physically exhausted, but the mental, emotional exhaustion of just trying to listen and understand people. In your notes. To understand the mind of a person, look at what he or she has already achieved. To understand the heart of a person, look at what he or she dreams of becoming. One will show you their heart and give you a whole different perspective of how they are and how they feel. And there are three questions when I want to connect with people. There are three questions I ask. If I were to have lunch with you today, if you and I were to go to lunch, and I could sit down and have an hour and 10 minutes with you, I could walk out of that lunch and I could pretty well know the keys to your heart. And I could know that by asking you three questions. Question number one, what do you laugh about? In other words, what makes you happy? If I could sit down at a lunch with you and I'd say, okay, what makes you happy? If you would talk to me about it right now, I'd talk to you about little Madeline, my grandchild, okay? And you've got something. You'd have something. You'd begin to talk. So what do you laugh about? The second question I'd ask you is, what do you cry about? What do you cry about? What makes you sad? What hurts? And the third question is, what do you dream about? What would you like to become? If you could be anything you ever wanted to be, if you could do anything you ever wanted to do, what would you be? What would you do? And when I want to lead people, here's what I know. If I know their heart, I know how they feel. If I know their mind, I know how they think. If I know what their strengths are, I know what they do well. And if I know what their weaknesses are, I know what they don't do well. And if I can know how they feel, how they think, what they do well and what they don't do well, I can go a long way in leading them successfully. My friend Norman Wright says, there are two basic reasons why relationships fail. Number one is fear, which causes us to always erect barriers when there's fear. And number two is selfishness, which causes us to focus on ourselves instead of others. Fear and selfishness are the two basic reasons why relationships usually fail. I got this next thing from the Kansas Agricultural Advertising Agency's new business philosophy. It's called Wear Muddy Boots. At the beginning of the meeting, the head of the agency reaches under the table and brings out a pair of muddy boots and puts them in the center of the conference table and says, now folks, this is our business philosophy at the agency. If you hire us, we will get our boots muddy. We will walk in the fields with you. We will get as deeply involved in your business as you are, and we will thoroughly understand your problems before we try to create advertising solutions for you. The old muddy boots, it just works. I was with our consultants at Enjoy Stewardship Services recently, and I was sharing with them that when they go out and help these pastors and they help these churches raise money for building programs and debt retirement, I said, first of all, here's what I want you to understand. The reason I formed this company, the reason I formed this organization is because as a pastor, I was always asking myself the question, who's going to help me raise money, reduce debt, and get the mortgage off my back? Because I wanted to put the money in staffing and in buildings. I didn't want to use it for paying off mortgages. And as a pastor, I kept thinking, who can help me? And so I told the consultants, I said, when you go, your first job is always to help that pastor. Put your mind where their mind is, put your heart where their heart is, and come right alongside them and join them because you want to add value. You want to lift them. Now, let's review. How do I gain influence? You have integrity with people, nurture people, have faith in people, listen to people, understand people. Notice the first 5 steps deals with our attitude. The first 5 things of gaining influence are attitude issues, and the last 5 steps are action issues. So let me give you the last 5 things. An influencer. An influencer enlarges people. Influencers have the ability to enlarge people. Question, here we go. How do you grow an organization? Grow people. How do you grow people? Grow yourself. Enlarging others always begins with enlarging yourself first. Does that make sense? You cannot give what you do not have. If you're going to grow, you've got to grow yourself before you can grow others. It's like the rather heavy man who went to on the sidewalk. There was one of these big sidewalk scales with a big needle, and he was very, very large guy himself, and he stepped on the scales with a large needle and put in his quarter, but he didn't know that the scales were broken, so the needle only went to 45 pounds. You got the picture? And a little girl standing on the sidewalk watching this with her mother. You know, she sees this huge guy get on the scale, and the needle goes to 45 pounds, and she's trying to figure out. She looks at the scale, she looks at the man, she looks at the scales, and she's trying to figure it out. And finally, she big smile breaks out on her face. She said, "Oh, Mom, look at that man." She said, "He's hollow." I know a lot of hollow people, don't you? If you're empty on inside, you cannot enlarge people. You cannot give what you do not have. So, what are the 6 essentials to enlarging others? Number 1, placing a high value on people. You will never try to grow other people if you don't believe in them. That's simple enough. Number 2, a personal commitment to growth. You have to have a personal commitment to growth. 3, a personal commitment to add value to others, where you say to yourself, what I want to do in my life is add value to them. Number 4, the ability to communicate your belief in others. Number 5, the ability to stretch them. And number 6, your highest joy is other people's success. When you can come to that place, it is huge what happens. In my book, The Success Journey, I wrote what I think success is, and I think it's 3 things. I think success is knowing my purpose in life. I think, secondly, it's growing to my maximum potential. And here's what I want you to see, the third part of success. I think success is sowing seeds that benefit others. I do not think you can be successful unless you pour your life into others. Does that make sense? Enlarging and caring for others. That's what influencers, that's what leaders do. But an influencer not only enlarges people, number 7, an influencer navigates for people. An influencer helps people in the journey by navigating for them. The law of navigation, anyone can steer a ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. I can remember the first time we did whitewater rafting. Especially we went into an area in Canada that was very rough waters. And I remember the guide looked at us and he said, I want to tell you 2 things. Number 1, he says, immediately obey me on command. When I tell you to paddle, paddle. When I tell you to bail, bail. When I tell you to lean one way, lean one way. He said, don't question. We don't want to get into debate. He said, you just remember, I'm the boss. Immediately obey me. And said the second thing he said we're going to do is he said we're going to get out of the raft. And he said when we go to the tough areas, we're going to get out of the raft and walk around the side. And we're going to look down at the river where the rough area is. I'm going to explain to you exactly what I want you to do, because he said our key to success is you knowing about the trouble before you ever get there. And man, I remember I'm sitting there and I'm taking notes mentally. I'm saying, this is huge. This is huge. What a leader does is a leader helps the people that are navigating down the river of life by saying, not only listen to me, but when we're getting ready for some trouble, we're going to stop. I'm going to show you these spots ahead. Because here's what I know about a leader. Are you ready? A leader is one who knows more than the people around them. So leaders, they know more, okay, than the other people around them. They see more than others see. A leader is one who sees farther than others see. And a leader is one who sees before others see. Now think about it for a moment. If you're getting on a ship and you're going on a journey, don't you want the captain to be able to see farther than you see? It just makes you feel a little bit more. I mean, do you want to get on a ship with Mr. Magoo? I mean, he's a happy boy, but the journey will be very exciting. No. You know what? Mr. Magoos don't have any business navigating for other people, And the law of navigation says the leader sees farther than others sees more than others sees before others see. And leaders, what they do is they navigate. An influencer connects with people. An influencer has the ability to connect with people. All great leaders and communicators have one thing in common, and that is they connect with people. So let me give you 4 connecting thoughts. Number 1, connecting with people is the leader's responsibility. Connecting with people is the leader's responsibility. It's not the follower's responsibility to connect with you. If you're the leader, I remember I used to, as a kid, go over to General Electric and watch the locomotives come into the yard there to connect with the box cars to get the General Electric supplies. And they come in and they would couple the cars and take them out. You know what I noticed as a kid? Not one time did the box cars ever run around the yard looking for the locomotive. The locomotive always looked for the boxcar. The leader always looks for those that are to follow. The followers don't have to connect with the leader. The leader connects with the followers. Number 2, connecting with people means caring for people. We've already talked about the nurturing and the listening and the understanding. Number 3, connecting with people means reading people. Again, leaders are readers of people, knowing where they are. And fourthly, connecting with people means going to their agenda first. That's what connecting with people means. The ability to get into their life. The 9th thing that influencers do is they empower people. John Craig says, no matter how much work you can do, no matter how engaging your personality may be, you will not advance far in business if you cannot work through others. Enlarging people, enlarging a person deals with their individual growth. You enlarge them by dealing with their individual growth. Empowering a person deals with their organizational growth. And empowerment means several things. It means seeing the potential of an individual. It means saying encouraging, empowering words to that individual. It means sharing your power and position. It means showing to others that you believe in them. That's all that stuff. All that stuff is empowerment. By the way, when I stop here for a moment, when I teach leadership, especially in international areas, when I teach leadership, come on up here for a second. Let me illustrate something. Just come on up here and you can stand with me, right? My name's John. What's your name?
Bob.
Bob. When I teach leadership in international areas, this is huge in empowerment. Because what happens many times in the international arena is leaders get a position and then they try to hold on to it and they try to push everybody else down. Are you with me? And it's kind of like playing King of the Mountain. You got it? And so, but here's what happens. Here's what I want you to see. You can either empower people and release them and let them go, or you can try to hold on to them and push them down. But let me just show you what happens. If I'm the leader here, and Bob happens to be in my organization, he's got great potential, but instead of enlarging him and building him up, I'm constantly pushing him down. Let me show you exactly when I start pushing Bob down. Now when I start pushing Bob down, not only am I pushing him down, but something happens to me.
That's right.
You see, when you start pushing your people down, you'll always go down with them.
That's right.
But empowering is an enlarging and releasing exercise of a leader. And here's what happens if I start helping Bob and lifting him and helping take him up to a new level. Every time I raise Bob up and bring him up to a new level, what's happening to me? I'm going up with him. Here's what I want you to understand with the leader. You'll always take the same journey as the people you lead. So if you push them down, you go down with them. If you lift them up, you go up with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Thanks, Bob. Good job. Give him a hand, would you? Good job. Okay. Good job. Okay. Now, there are 5 essentials. Look at your notes. There are 5 essentials to empowerment. Number 1, find a person worthy of empowerment. I'm not saying empower without discretion. Number 2, clearly lay out their mission and responsibilities. In other words, let them know what they're supposed to do. Thirdly, verbally and visually show your support. Fourthly, keep an open door relationship with them. And number 5, give them the public credit when successful. And the key is giving them the public credit when successful. One more thing, and I'll wrap up this lecture. Here we go. Number 10. One more thing that an influencer does. An influencer, number 10, reproduces other people. Influencers have the ability not only to draw people to themselves, but they have the ability to reproduce other people in their life. And here's the way it works. When you influence a child, you influence a life. That's a fact. When you influence a parent, you influence a family. But when you influence a worker, you influence an organization or a company. And when you influence a leader, you influence everyone who looks to him or to her for leadership. So you can see the multiplication power of empowerment itself. So here's the question. Why don't all leaders develop other leaders? Have you ever thought of that before? Because it takes a leader to develop a leader. It takes a leader to it takes one to know one, takes one to grow one, takes one to show one. Okay, why don't most leaders develop other leaders? Number 1, because they're insecure. And if we're insecure, we'll never develop another leader because we're afraid they'll take our job. Isn't that right? Oh my goodness, I don't want to, oh my goodness, I might be replaced. Oh happy day, oh happy day. Okay. Number 2, they spend too much time with the followers. Number 3, followers, and this is very true, followers are easier to find and lead than leaders. Isn't that true? I mean, it's easy. If I tell you right now, walk out of the auditorium and go out and find some followers, that isn't hard. You just go out and find people. But if I say go out and find some leaders, it's a little, see, leaders are hard to find. And not only are leaders hard to find, leaders are hard to gather. Isn't that true? You tell a leader, come with me. And, the leader doesn't just jump on and say, oh, yeah, well, good, you're moving, I'll go. You tell a leader to go with you, and they'll say, where are you going? When you coming back? What are you going to do while you're gone? How much does it cost? Can I drive? Huh? Isn't that true? Leading leaders, I've often said, is like herding cats. Number 4, the fourth reason we don't develop others to be leaders is that they don't recognize the value of developing leaders. They don't realize the value of multiplication with leaders. And number 5, leadership has been viewed as a competitive effort, not a cooperative one. I think this is a huge problem right here. We look at leadership as a competitive effort, not a cooperative one. Let me explain to you. Remember when you were a kid? How many of you when you were kids, how many of you played Follow the Leader? Huh? You play that game? Remember what the job of the leader was to do? The job of the leader was to do complicated things so that the followers would never become the leader. Isn't that right? In other words, it was the job of the leader to do things so difficult that no one would ever become the leader except the person that was leading. So it was your job as a leader to protect your job. What was the job of the followers? To take the job away from the leader. They wanted to be the leader themselves, so they had to outperform the leader so they could become the leader. This competitive spirit, I remember when I was a kid, I grew up, I loved to play basketball, and on my home court, it's the one that's the basketball, the basket's on your garage. You got what I'm saying? On my home court with my driveway, I was awesome. And I'd play follow lead with the kids, and if I saw one of them getting real close to me, there was this deal that the backboard came out from the garage. There was this deal where I'd take the basketball and I would hit the garage, it would go over the backboard, and it would go right through the nets. I mean, only a kid who spends hours doing nothing can do that kind of thing. You understand? Okay. And so when I wanted to shake the followers, You know how I'd always go to the try and prove. I said, well, all right, they're making their foul shots, they're making their jump shots, they're making their layups, they're making their hooks. All right, I'm going to fix them. And I go over to the garage, and I do this shot, and every time I'd lose them all. Man, I got to keep the job. Now, many times, I think we carry that game over to life. And we somehow think that this is a competitive effort. See, we're not here to compete with one another. We're here really to complete one another. And leaders understand this process. And if you're going to reproduce others, you have to be willing to give your job away. You have to be willing to empower people. You have to want to have other people succeed. My niece Amanda, she was just down to visit me a couple of months ago, and she works in the emergency room of a hospital. So I was saying, Amanda, talk to me. How do they train you to do this emergency stuff? I mean, this is kind of a bloody kind of a deal. I mean, how do they train? And she said, it's very easy. She said, we have a 3-step process in the emergency room. And I said, oh, you mean you do 3 steps when you go in the emergency room? She said, all the training is in 3 ways. And I said, well, what is it? She said, well, you watch one. In other words, you watch somebody do it, and then you do one, and then you train one. Watch one, do one, train one. She says that's how we train in the emergency room. I watch them do it. I do it. I train somebody else to do it. And that day when she talked to me, I thought to myself, if every one of us would just do that 3-step formula in life, watch somebody do it ourselves, and then pass it on. Because our influence really never grows until we use it to help our fellow man. Does that make sense? Thank you very much.